Hey patrons, this is Kev. Been a little while, and I wanted to do something really, really cool for you guys. And I thought, well, a lot of people ask how to do environments and how to do, especially like I've been getting a lot of questions on the underwater environment off my YouTube channel lately, and it kind of shows me some trends that are going on. And aside from just throwing out another survey that you guys can answer, I thought I'd just go ahead and make this video because it is really cool. And for those who want to do any kind of underwater environment or anything that you need fog or stuff for, I want to show you how I would go about doing it. So the first thing that we're going to do is look at some reference, because I always go for reference first. If photography exists for something, I'm going to check that out first, because it just gives me ideas and it shows me kind of what it really looks like. And I see a lot of tutorials out there going into, oh, we'll just start creating this and we'll throw this stuff in that your mind thinks you see and all this stuff. And no, no, let's look at some underwater shots first and kind of dissect them and show like what makes an underwater shot, right? What does it look like when you bring a camera underwater? So this guy, probably, I'm gonna guess this is probably a technical dive. It might not be. It might be like about 130 feet down, which is the limit of recreational diving, I believe. But you can see the few things here. If you look at this picture, A, it's very blue. Okay, I think the scatter from the light just kind of changes and makes everything this kind of blue color underwater. Plus, probably the reflection from the sky and so on and so forth. But anyway, so you get this kind of blue cast over everything, and that's not always the case, as I'll show you a little bit later. But that generally holds true for what people think of when they see underwater. And it's true because we're actually looking at a photo from underwater, right? And another thing here is if you look at the dive equipment, I'd be willing to bet on the surface that, let's zoom in a little bit here, that these hoses are probably like a very iridescent yellow. And if you look at here underneath the water, it loses its saturation. Okay, so another takeaway that we can take away from this is is that you lose saturation underwater. Okay, then the deeper you go, the darker it gets and the less saturated things appear. All right, so depending on how deep you go and how much sediment and environment is in the water, it tends to desaturate quite a bit. I mean, I'm gonna guess that that's pretty heavily desaturated. You can even see his skin tone. That's just totally blue. That's just completely desaturated. All the blues here, even very desaturated. Okay, so that's one thing we can take away. Another thing we can take away is the blur. Okay, there's quite a bit of blur, and the deeper you go, the more blur you get. Okay, because the light is refracting and it's causing this blur effect. So you can add blur, but it's not like a uniform blur. It's kind of broken up. Like if we go in closer here, you can see that certain things are kind of sharp and other things are kind of like murky, blurred out. It's kind of a weird, arbitrary blur. And again, that has a lot to do with the environment and different, especially temperature differential down there, and all sorts of things that can refract and reflect the light. But it's a pretty good tell. And you can also see like there's growth on like everything. Okay, so the longer something's underwater, the more these barnacle things kind of attach and start growing, and the rust and all sorts of other environmental factors play in. Sediment, all sorts of stuff. Okay, we look at another shot. Here we have, I'm going to say this is a diver. No. Okay, so this is a free dive. They don't have oxygen. I'm guessing they're probably about 15, maybe 20 feet down, if I had to guess. And you could see that we're getting some caustic patterns here because we're pretty close to the surface, but we're not getting those like tight caustic patterns that people like to just throw on everything, right? Oh, it's underwater. You have to put those like caustic patterns and they have to dance. No, they don't. They don't. It depends on the water. It depends on your environment. It depends on how much sediment and murk. I'm gonna just use the word murk because I like it. Murk is floating around in the water, and you can see here that you do get some caustic differential. Okay, you get the light beams coming through. Okay, it's light. The powerful light is cutting through the sediment here, but you're not getting these like dancing tight patterns that you would see like in a swimming pool, right? So you don't always have to have those. And you can see here's the blur. Okay, the murk okay, the blur, the environment. Okay, you're getting the different blurs. Certain things are a little sharper than other areas. Okay, so there's quite a bit. And you also see here that the closer you are to the camera and the light, the more saturated things get. But as they recede into the distance, they get completely desaturated. Right, so always keep that in mind. Right, next picture. Okay, here, probably about, again, these are, looks like be about free dive, no oxygen. I'm gonna guess maybe, I don't know, maybe 30 feet down, if I guessed. Okay, unless this is really murky, they could be like 10 feet down. I don't know. But again, you see same patterns, right? As you recede into the background, the water gets thicker, the light doesn't hit the camera as well, so you're getting this, you know, falls off into this fog. Okay, desaturated. Plenty of you know, opportunity for saturation, but it just doesn't exist. Okay, the most saturated thing is probably this yellow right here. And if we go in close, and this is Earthen view, I don't know the keyboard shortcuts for it, but if we go in close, okay, you can see it's yellow. You can definitely tell, but it's pretty desaturated. Okay, I mean, it's not like beige yet. You can still see it's pretty bright, but it loses its saturation. And all of this stuff heavily desaturated. Sorry, I just had to do that. Here's a turtle, a tortoise, underwater. And my guess is maybe about within 10 feet of the surface. And again, you know, I guess this is relatively murky. You do get some caustic patterns on him, you can see. So you do get some of the caustic lighting showing up, but it's not like pronounced. Okay, it's just enough that you could see if you were to animate this that it would be dancing, but you know, not super crazy. And he's pretty close to the surface. So again, you know, if it's cloudy outside, you're not going to get those caustic patterns, right? You're not going to get the harsh sunlight. So you got to take all of this stuff into account when you're doing an underwater scene. Okay, these are the things that you would think about, right? Okay, here's another one. This one is pretty close to the surface. I don't think we're that deep, maybe 10, 15 feet. And again, you know, you're getting a little bit of dancing. Okay, this is very bright, so you're not really seeing any like tight, you know, refractive caustic patterns here, but you're seeing a little bit. And you're seeing, you know, a lot of this guy's swimming pretty close to the sand bed, so he's kicking up a lot of dust. So a lot of this sand is diluting into the water, which is creating more environment down here, which is further refracting the light and preventing the light beams and any of the tight stuff from happening. Okay, and you can see too, it's relatively desaturated. If we were to take them out, these browns would probably be much more saturated. Yep. Here's a swimming pool. This is where we're getting those tight patterns. Okay, swimming pool, sterile. Okay, we dump chlorine or bromine into the water. Okay, if you go to the amusement parks like Pirates of the Caribbean and you get that smell of the Disney, you know, those Disney water rides, it's bromine. But we usually use chlorine in pools, and it sterilizes it, right? So there's no murk, there's no dirt. This is all you know, concrete or shotcrete or whatever they use for this, and it's sterile. So you have almost no environment, no sediment, nothing in the water. So you're just getting a pure water tank, and you're getting pure refraction from the breakup of the surface tension, right? So the water just does this cool pattern, right? So in a pool, you're generally going to want to have this unless it's overcast or nighttime or whatever, and that changes, you know, the overall environment. But you don't always need to have these caustic patterns. And I see so many tutorials out there that just throw these in there everywhere, and I'm like, no, you have to look at the environment. Okay. Here's another one. Okay, this guy's free diving, so I'm guessing probably about within 100 and, you know, probably about 100 feet. And you could see that if I had to guess, maybe 50 feet, 60 feet down. Some of these guys in Indonesia, they do these like crazy dives. I've seen YouTube videos. You look it up. It's really cool. Like I lose my breath like just watching these guys. I gasp for oxygen. But anyway, you can see here that it's completely murky. Okay, you're getting some light down here. Okay, it's bright enough that you're still getting some light, but everything is completely desaturated. All right, and I don't think this was too color corrected. And over here, especially, look how sharp this is over here. Okay, look how much detail you can see over here, and then look over here how blurry it is. You're getting complete refractive blur everywhere, but it's not uniform. Okay, this is an ununiform blurring. Okay, this stuff is probably like lens blur and stuff too, but you're also getting a lot of refraction from the water and the environment, and that's blurring things out as well. So you got to pay attention to that. Always have some blur that's more blurry areas and less blurry areas, and it kind of sells it a little bit more, right? And I might actually use something like this to do an example, because I kind of like that Buddha statue. So maybe when I do a YouTube video based on this, I might do that. Don't know yet. Okay, here's some fish. This is right near the surface. Okay, we're man, what is this, like 3 feet, maybe 2 feet, 3 feet here. So you do see there's a lot of sediment and a lot of, you know, murk in the water here. But being that we're so close to the surface, you're getting this refractive, these refractive dancing patterns here. Okay, and you're also getting like a lot of stuff on the surface too that's kind of obscuring the light. So there's quite a bit happening in this photo, but you're getting that you know, that look. And then you can see, though, there's so much in the environment here that really does kind of obscure and blur out and desaturate the background. So anything further, the further away you get from the camera, the more murk, the less light reaches the lens, and you know, you get that. But you are getting these like strong light rays too. So that tells you there's environment here, there's sediment. Because if you look at the pool, there was no sediment, right? It was just like the surface and then the bottom, and it had those dancing light rays, right? Here you're getting actual like rays cutting through the fog. Okay, so keep that in mind too when you're creating. Here's another one. We're right near the surface, but there's so much going on here that you're not really getting, you know, you're getting some breakup here. You're getting lighting breakup. Okay, so you are getting some caustics, but look at this. You're not getting strong light rays. Like over here, you might get some strong light rays, but they're diffused pretty quickly. And you're seeing probably about maybe 10 feet right here where you're getting nothing. And a lot of that is the exposure to the camera, but it gets pretty dark pretty quickly too. So if you're going into these like cavern areas that block the light, it's pitch black down there, right? And you see like this turtle is completely desaturated. And even like some of these things that you'd think would be heavily saturated, they get pretty desaturated. So these greens, these yellows, and burnt umbers and ochres, they're pretty desaturated here. So you always want to take that into account. Okay, here's another one. She's down here, free dive with a snorkel. I'm going to say she's probably maybe 15 feet down, 20 feet down. And the light is not really, you're getting some of these light rays, but not a whole lot. You're getting enough that these patterns are heavily diffused down here. So even if you were to use those caustic patterns, you would heavily blur them out down here and just kind of have them spill over the, you know, the rocks and the sand, right? So let's go into Blender and see how we can start recreating some of these looks. All right, so here we are in Blender, and we're going to jump in and create our scene. Now, I'm using Blender 3.0. It's just released a couple of days ago now at the time of this video, and it's really nice. It's kind of snappy and fun and sharp, and I just kind of like it. So, but we're going to use it in production. So let's try to recreate this scene without the diver, because I don't have the diver right now. But we'll try to recreate something like this, and it'll be fun, and we'll set it up and make it really nice. So the first thing we're going to notice is like we need some kind of rock material and a ground and some lights, maybe a surface. I don't know. We'll see. So let's do this. So the first thing we're going to do is set up my camera. All right, I'm going to take this, and this is going to be my volume that we're going to use for all the fog and sediment and stuff. So I'm just going to go ahead and call this vol. And I'm going to hide it for now. And then I'm going to take my camera and you know what? Let me turn on this little helper app that I have here. It's a little add-on so you can see what I'm doing with my things here. And so let's go ahead and hit Alt G and Alt R. And then, so that centers it. And then let's hit RX90. And that's not PX90, RX90, and we have it facing straight down the y-axis, and it's great. So now what we can do is we can set up, while we're in here, let's set up a few things. So focal length, if you're underwater, usually shooting kind of like, I've seen like so much underwater with GoPros and things like that. So let's get kind of a wide angle, like 24, all right? We'll make it pretty wide. And clip start 100, that's definitely, we want a bit more than that, even though we're not going to see out that far because of the fog. I kind of like having that, so that way it won't automatically clip off at the horizon. And maybe I'll show you that later. And then what else can we do? Let's take resolution. Let's do my new favorite resolution, 2048 by 858, which is, if I hit 0, it's that nice wide angle 2:391 ratio, aspect ratio that Dune on HBO was. Not IMAX, that was like bigger, but this is like that nice cinematic look. I don't know, I just like it. After watching Dune, I'm psyched. Okay, so let's go ahead and add in a few things, right? So we can do this. Let's add in a ground. All right, so Shift A, let's call in a grid. Let's make the grid pretty large. So I had to stop saying because then I have to edit that out. So here we go. So let's say 50. Okay. Subdivisions, I'll put at 50 for now because we're going to subdivide it a little bit, or maybe we won't. I don't know, but it's not going to kill us. And then I'll move it a bit down the Y, just enough that it captures, so it's still with the camera. So maybe 25. Okay, that's pretty good. Hit 0. And now let's move the camera up a little bit on the Y. And there we go. So now we kind of have a horizon going. And it's definitely not wide enough, but that's okay because we're going to like block it out with stuff. So I don't even know if we're going to see that. Okay. And now let's start getting some rocks. Okay, so what can we do for rocks? Well, let's just start blocking it out. Okay. Did it again. So let's go cube, push the cube down on the Y. There it is. Let's hit G and kind of bring it up, push it into the floor a little bit. And let's see if we, okay, this is definitely coming from behind the camera. So let's pull this back a bit. And we can add, let's see. So let's hit Control 3 and make it into a subdivided cube. And I think I need more. So let's say 6, probably pretty good. And then let's go ahead and add a displace. And I made a displacement map with a really nice noise that looks kind of like this underwater rock stuff. And I'll make that available on Patreon as well in the download area. So I'm gonna hit new. Then I'm gonna go here, and then I'm gonna say open. Okay, I navigate over to the thing I made, and here it is. Here's the displacement. I hit, and you'll see if you download this, it's like 48-bit. Okay, it's way too big. It's way bigger than you ever need. You can go into Photoshop or Affinity and downsample it if you want, but I just like having the latitude. So I hit open, and there it is, and I get rocks, but not quite yet. So let's go color space, non-color. Okay, and then I will go to, let's see, back up to the modifier properties, say coordinates, I'll say UV map. It gives me this is just an annoying kind of clip off. I don't have it seamless right now, but it still works really well for what we need. So there we go. And let me see, smooth shade, and push the strength up a bit, find a good angle, and there we go. And I think what I can do is I can apply this, and then I can do one more. So Control 1 to get one more subdivision on this, and see if that makes a difference. And let's push that before the displace, and it does make a difference. So we're getting a much nicer breakup now. And then what we can do is, so I can put G, kind of pull that in, and then kind of dot it out. So let's hit Shift D, push this down. I like having this open because you could hit G and all the keyboard shortcuts and stuff, but I just like doing it this way. To each his own. D, push this down a bit more, down the Y. Okay, let's start building this up. Okay. And at this point, we're going to have shaders on this, so it's not going to make too much of a difference. But for now, let's just do that. Shift D, pull that up, maybe bring that back a little bit. Shift D, rotate that around. And it kind of curves around, so let's just do that, right? Shift D, push that back. Shift D. You could scale these too, just to get the shape. And they'll all like blend in with the textures, so you don't have to worry too much. All right, so something like that. And then let's see, the other side has just this little piece here. Now this is a vertical shot. We're doing this like super wide, but whatever, who cares? So we'll fake it. Shift D. Okay, let's do Shift D. Shift D. Shift D. All right, something like that. Okay. And now let's go to shading and see what we can do. All right, so okay, let's go in here, let's hit 0. And let's turn on the rendered view and realize we're still in Eevee. So let's go ahead and change Eevee to cycles because that's what we're going to use. And we get this kind of nice rocky looking breakup, right? It kind of looks pretty interesting. I like that. So let's go ahead and what we can do now is, you know what, I should have, well, this is cool because I can show you a really cool trick here. So let's add in a new shader to this guy, okay? And let's make him red for now so we can see. And what I'll do is I'll select all the other cubes, right? And then I'll just say, you know, link transfer data, and then link materials. And now they all have the same shader. So let's call this rocks. And now we don't need to see it anymore. So let's make it just a kind of a brown color for now. Cool. And now let's work on our ground. So the ground seems to have a cool, I don't know, just this weird, it's not weird, it's sand, right? So let's just grab sand. So to do that, I'm just gonna hit new. I'm going to call this C bed for the shader. And a cool thing is if you have Node Wrangler installed, which I think it is in 3.0, I think it's turned on by default. But if you don't know what Node Wrangler is, like I don't want to take too much time right now, but if it's in edit preferences, add-ons, and then just type in Node Wrangler and just check it. So here we just have a way to hit there's a way to build up an entire PBR shading network really easily. So if you hit Control-Shift-T while on Principled Shader, and then you navigate over to where you have, so like I have ground, what is this? Ground 27 from cc0textures.com. I'll put the link in the Patreon. So if you go here and you select color, displacement, normal, and I'll use roughness. I don't think I'm going to use that underwater. But yeah, and then hit Principled Texture Setup. Watch this, it auto-magically sets up your whole network for you. So now you have textures and mapping over here. So you have base color going where it's supposed to, roughness goes where it's supposed to, displacement goes up here where it's supposed to, and normal map goes where it's supposed to. So that's great. I'm not going to end up using the displacement. You can use adaptive subdivision. I generally don't like that because I like to kind of see more of what I'm getting in frame rather than waiting for render. And adaptive subdivision is awesome. It looks great, but you have to wait forever for the first pixel. And it kind of hampers my workflow a bit. So I only use it sparingly. So what I do, though, is being that I have this all loaded in and all of these textures are loaded in, I can use the displacement on this thing, right? So I can go over to displacement, add modifier. I'll hit Control-3 to give it a subdivision surface. Okay, you could also just go add modifier subdivision surface, but I like the keyboard shortcut. And then I can go ahead and add in a displace modifier, and you'll see that it kind of just does nothing, right? So what I'll do is I'll hit new. Okay, it gives me a texture, and it's, if you hit this little icon over here, show texture and texture tab, or you hit over here, same thing, you go to texture. And instead of hitting new or open for image or movie, you just go to this little icon and you look for ground displacement, okay? Because you loaded it in during here and now you're getting this displacement. And you'll see that it's kind of crazy, so I definitely don't want it to be that crazy. So what I'll do is I'll just go back to modifier and just take it down to like point 0.1. Yeah, that's probably good enough for here. We're not going to see too much of it, but just enough. So there. So now we have this, we have this setup and it's looking pretty interesting. And let's look at our reference again. Okay, here's our reference. So the background is pretty obscured. We can actually probably move this stuff closer. So we could actually probably go in here and move these things closer in. Even, or not. It doesn't really matter. And now we can start looking at the environment, right? So you can see how I'm building this up. Okay, this is my personal workflow. You guys can do your own thing, but I've been doing this for a long time, and this kind of works for me. So maybe it'll work for you too. So what we can do is we can start with the environment. So let's go ahead. We'll go back to layout. You can see here, and you probably want to click on this, right click and hit shade smooth. Okay, there we go. And then we'll turn this back to Eevee. Okay, we'll see this in this view. Nice. So what we can do now is I can hit Shift A and add in a light, and I'll add in a sunlight for now. And that gives us this sunlight coming down. And it's just coming straight down, and it's on top of the camera because we're at 0, 0, 0. So I'll just push this light out a little bit on the Y and bring them up on the Z so we can see it. Okay, there it is. And from here you can like rotate it around, rotate the sunlight, get what you want. So if you want like a cool desert scene from Dune, this kind of works for that too. But we're putting this underwater, so whatever. So in this case, we have the light coming down from here. So let's find that angle. Right, something like this. Okay, it's coming. Big wall of light. Okay, picture an infinite wall of light coming from this direction. That's what the sunlight is. And now let's look at this picture. So you can see that there are shadows, but they're all soft, right? The shadows are soft because they're diffused in all this environment stuff, right? So let's just fake that really. Go to light and take this angle, and the angle, you push the angle up and it softens out the shadows. Okay, it will render a little bit. It takes a little bit longer to render this, but you get nice soft shadows this way, and it's really nice. Okay, now we add in our environment. So first thing we can do is we can go to the world output. All right, so world properties, and we could say color, and we can choose a color. So let's choose like a blue. Okay, this kind of dark blue, something like that maybe. And remember, it's not too saturated, right? You want to stay away from the saturation. So something like maybe like that. Okay, you can make it darker. All right, fun, right? Then what we could do is we could take the volume that we made, okay, and this is just going to be surrounding the camera right now. So what we don't want to do is worry about why it's black right now. But if you turn it on, and you go like, oh wow, I don't see any difference, right? So let's see what's going on here. Let's go to wireframe. Pull it up, and okay, so we did move the camera up, so there's our box. So let's take the box and let's cover the whole scene, right? So I'll hit S, scale it up, and we can even go to top view. I love this little widget here. Top view, and we can just hit G and we can move it over the whole scene. Okay, so now we're over the whole scene. Pretty cool. All right, camera's inside it. Okay, you want the camera to be inside, and hit 0. There we go. So now if you go ahead and go to back to cycles, you're going to see nothing. And the reason for that is you don't have a shader on here. So let's go to shading again. Okay, it's going to take a little while. It's going to render. So we have a material already on here. Okay, so volume has a material. Okay, it's just called material. So let's change that to volume or fog or whatever. And let's go ahead and we can select just Principled Shader, hit Shift S for swap if you have Texture or Node Wrangler installed, and we'll go to Shader, and we'll go to you can use Volume Scatter, that works, but I'm going to use Principled Volume here, and then just take this. It's not a surface; it's actually a volume, And now we have a volume. And you could see that if we go back out here and zoom out, you could see it's actually a volume. It looks, you know, like a piece of foam. Okay, it's representing a volume. I don't know if it's VDB in this instance, but it's a volume. Now here is the problem. My last video that I did on underwater scenes, I don't know if you guys would have seen it. Maybe you did. It's up on YouTube. The density on volumes really got more sensitive, somewhere between 2.8, which was the version, I think 2.80, which is what I made that one in, and 2.9 or whatever, or definitely between there and 3. Because if you watch now, you take the density down, right, to 0, and you start walking it up, it quickly gets really thick, really fast, right? So if I hit 0 and I go in here, you could see that this is like, even with a low sunlight, okay, even if I push the sunlight up to like 15, which is pretty powerful, it's still pretty sensitive, okay? So if I click on this and we start walking it up, okay, by 0.2, yeah, right? So watch, even if I take the sunlight and I push it even higher, like 150, okay? Not bad, but it's still pretty darn sensitive. So we can leave it at that, right? We can leave it here, or instead of playing this game with these, you know, 0.2, 0.1, point whatever, we can add in, okay, Shift A, we can add in an input, RGB, take the color to the density, okay, which, you know, yellow to gray is a no-no, but it's fine. And then we can use this to kind of control it as well, okay? And this is acting on a really interesting math going on behind the scenes here, where we're controlling this with physical parameters. So watch this. So if I change the color, okay, to like blue, but I'm over the limit, I'm over a certain limit here, it kind of like red shifts out. So we go back, and now we get the blue. You know, we get a nice shade. Okay, going to complement. Or, you know, we can stick to the 0.2. So maybe we'll just do that for now, because this kind of gets a little confusing. But I kind of like that setup. So we could stick to here, and now we have this happening, okay? Okay, so let's start really getting this lit. All right, so we don't want to rely just on this, but let's go ahead. And the first thing we can do is we have the principled volume, right? And you can see that as that sunlight gets hotter, okay, you have to kind of go in the opposite direction. So let's take it to about there. Okay. We can turn the sunlight up even further if we want, say like 250, maybe 500. 150 seems good. And now we can start thinking about the gradient, okay? Because we have a pretty harsh sunlight coming down, scenes in here, okay? So we could start really kind of pushing this. So let's take our volume first and see, maybe we have too much, maybe we're too deep inside the volume. So the first thing we can do is we can kind of push our volume out on the Y, and that'll kind of bring in some of the lighting that we want on here, while still giving us a nice fall off in the background. And then what we can also do is we can push the anisotropy up a bit, and that will allow for some glowing and a nice gradient. Okay, so that this is, if anything in underwater, this helps a lot. Or anything with fog, like you want some nice glows and you want the lights to actually like look like they're interacting with the environment. This is your play toy. This is your thing. Okay, so this is really nice, and you can see that we're picking up a lot of like, you know, cool color gradation in here. And we can always, you know, you can see here that as we're closer, this is a sharper, even though this is blurry down here. I think that's more of a camera thing that might be in motion as this person took the picture. So, because this looks a little motion blurry, but you could see that, you know, we're getting blurs here. We'll take care of that in post, but you know, we're getting a lot of difference in tonality and saturation going on in here. So we can really mimic that by doing this. And you can see here, this already looks pretty cool for underwater. So it's already starting to get there. So what can we do now? Let's add a texture onto our rocks, right? So, because now we're at the point where we can start actually looking for texture and seeing how that interplays with our scene. So I'm going to go ahead, select this. I'm going to hit Control Shift T, and I'm going to find another one of my textures that I got from CC0. This is Ground 36. Okay, so I'm going to choose the color, displacement, normal, and roughness. Hit that. It wires itself up, and automatically this is going to look different. Watch this. There we go. So now it's taking this like dirt grime texture that we have and applying it, and now it's looking a lot better, a lot more underwatery, right? So not bad, not too bad at all. So now if I do a quick render, and you'll see here that version 3 defaults now render to max samples 4096. Yeah, that's like I don't have time for that right now, so I'm going to take the 40 off and just go 96, and I'll leave denoise on. Denoise generally gets kind of screwy with volumes, but at this resolution it might be okay. So let's try a test render. Going. I think I'm using the CPU. I could have used a GPU, but yeah, there we go. So not bad. Not bad. We have sand. We have, you know, nice. The horizon line is obscured. We have a nice gradation happening in here, and we have, you know, this texture may not be the best. I would love to create a nice underwater with barnacles and stuff, but for now, this seems to work decently for what we need, especially for look development. This is okay. So not bad. Okay, not bad. So there is some texture stretching on here. We can like duplicate this and take some of the stretching out, but overall, not too bad. So what we can do is we can look now at the comp. So the first thing I want to do though is if I go to comp, there's a few things that I definitely want, and this was on CPU. Let me turn that to GPU. So there are a few things that I definitely want here. So let's go to view layer properties, and turn on Z, turn on mist. I'm doing a denoise. You know what? We could turn on ambient occlusion too. We can use that. And I think that's pretty good for now. That's fine. And we'll do another render image. And that'll be, this one should go faster because I'm using GPU. Even though I don't have a powerful GPU. This computer right now, I'm running a GTX 1070. So it's like a 5 or 6 year old card now. But it still works. So why not? And with GPU prices the way they are, yeah, whatever. So here we go, topping out probably at 22 seconds. Not, I'll take 22 seconds, right? Just for look dev, that's not bad at all. So if I look now and I go to compositing and I hit use nodes, here we are, okay? So I'm going to do that, stretch that out. Then I'm gonna hit Control Shift, click on image, and I get a viewer. And then a cool keyboard shortcut is V. You hit V a couple times and it goes into the viewport, right? So now what we can do is we can start working on the actual look of the, you know, the blurring and stuff, right? So the first thing I'm gonna do is blur out the background a bit. So to do that, I'm gonna hit Shift A, and I'm gonna use filter. I'm gonna say vector blur. No, not vector blur, that's for motion blur. I'm gonna use defocus. Okay, defocus. And because there's not a whole lot of bokeh happening in these images, so I'm going to take the depth, plug that into Z, and immediately I get this background blurring out, which is what we want. And preview, if you look here, you see this like breakup here. You take off preview. Sometimes it looks a little bit better, sometimes it doesn't. Okay, it's not like the greatest, but it works. Now we can also use Z buffer, and we can say like 5.6. Okay, for that, and that kind of gives us a storytelling aperture. We can go 11. Okay, that's a bit better. So now we're getting some blur here. We're getting some sharpness in here. We're getting some sharpness out there. Using the f-stop, gamma correction, I could take or leave, but max blur, we can take that down and just kind of give it just enough blur So it's looking okay. Okay, we can play with the threshold a bit. Okay, that's just like the distance between, the fall off between blur and not blur. And play around until we're happy. And we're actually, this is starting to look, pretty decently underwater. Okay, so we got the saturation and everything kind of blacking out back here. Okay, we got a blurring. We have, we could use some more sharpness in here. So that way you could say take off use Z buffer and you'll get the sharpness in here and the blur back here. So it's a matter of choice. For instance, like this guy, this guy has the sharpness here and everything's kind of blurry back here. But we're just whatever. Okay. Another thing we can do is we can play with mist pass. The mist pass, okay, if you look here, is just anything white, anything black is closer to the camera, and anything white is further away from the camera. So we can use this to overlay and do some interesting stuff with. So let's just take this, plug this back in here, and I can overlay this on top. So I can do a color, I can do a mix, then I can take this mist, plug it in here. Okay, that's on top, and I could say add. I don't want to do that though. So let's do a multiply, and let's invert that. So anything white won't be touched. Anything dark will be dark. Anything black will be darker. So we're gonna take this and invert it. Okay, so invert. Color, invert. So we're just flipping the values. And now the area, so you can see once I inverted it, watch, I'll show you. Here we go. So this is before inversion. Okay, so if we're multiplying, anything black is going to darken and anything light is going to stay the same, right? So here we invert it, and our foreground now is white or a little bit gray, so that's going to stay relatively the same value, and anything in the background is going to darken. Okay, that's kind of what we want. So we can hook that back up to here, and now it's doing its thing. But okay, it's kind of annoying, so we kind of want to blur that out. So let's just go Shift A, filter. Let's do a blur, just a normal blur. Throw that on top of here. Okay. And we can go hit relative, and we can kind of start blurring that out a bit. Okay, and then we can take the factor down, and this way we're just controlling that. We're just getting a nice control in the back. Okay, where it gets a little bit darker back there. Okay, and don't worry about the alpha issue here. Like once you blur it, that kind of goes away. So it's just a tool to use. You don't have to do what I'm doing right now. It just kind of helps. Clamp. I don't know if clamping is going to do anything with the blur. It might. I mean, it'll definitely like clamp your values so nothing goes super white or super dark. So that's probably okay. And yeah, we can start going from here and pulling stuff in. And I think what I'll do too is we can actually go ahead and we could try to put a surface in here too if we want. So to do that, let's go to layout. Okay, let's make a plane, Shift A. Let's go to mesh. Let's do plane. Okay, let's take that plane and put it above everything. Scale it up. Put it above, put it out. And there it is. Okay, so we want to scale it up further. So it's going the whole length of everything. And that should block the light. And it does. So what we want to do is we just want to take that and let's try shading. Okay, give it a new shader. Let's give it a transmission all the way. Roughness all the way down. Not all the way up. And I don't want it to really be affecting this whole scene. So you can see we're in cycles here, and this is blocking everything. So let's do this. Let's take the plane, and we'll put the plane in its own layer. So new collection. Okay, well, we'll put this plane into collection 2. And then what we'll do is we'll take the sun and we'll pull the sun out into the main scene collection. So it's not affecting, so everything gets affected by that. And I'll call this main scene, and I'll call this surface. Okay, so now I'll take the view layer here, and view layer 1, I'll call this main scene. And I'll make a new view layer, and new. And I'll call this surface. So now we can control each of these, and I'll show you how we use this later. So we have main scene and we have surface. And main scene, okay, inside main scene view layer, we're going to turn off surface because we don't want it on. Okay, so all that goes away. Okay, and then in surface, we're going to turn off main scene, and we just want surface. Okay, and now what we can do is we're in surface. We can go ahead and we can play with the surface and try to get some kind of nice, a nice surface breakup. So what we can do is we can add a bump map. So let's just hit vector bump, and I'll throw the bump into normal. Okay, and then I'll go here, hit Control T, that wires this up. And then for image, I'll hit Control S to swap, and I'll go texture, and I'll say, let's try Musgrave for now. Okay, let's look at roughness. Okay, and bump. Let's go to height. Okay, and here we start getting our look. Okay. So I just want like the hint of it. I don't need too much because I'm not going to worry too much about this. I just kind of want it to. I want it to like look like there's something up there, that's kind of refracting the light. Okay. So that's probably good. And what I think I want to do too is for this, I want to go ahead and go to in this view layer. I'm going to go. I think it's tags it to view layer. I want to go to film over here and say transparent because I don't want the background. All right, but it does show the background in here, and that's probably okay because I'm just gonna screen this over, so the lights are gonna pick up and the darks are not. So I think that's okay. Yeah, I think that'll work. Transparent glass. Let's see. Specular. Roughness. Yeah, that's probably good. Okay. Now if I render both of these, you'll see that it's going to render two things at once. So watch. I'm going to hit render image, and it's going to render the first one. Okay, so we have main scene and surface. Okay, so now this is cool. If I go back to compositing, okay, and I can duplicate this guy. All right, this is one way to do it. Duplicate them, and then I can say main scene, and I can change that to surface. Now it's just this, and then I can say multiply. I can hit Shift D. I can change multiply to say screen or add. Okay, plug this into here, and now I have this this happening here, and let's try screen add. I don't want to do overlay. Add. And perhaps I want to do that before everything. That's the cool thing about nodal based comp. You can swap things out if you don't like them, and put them almost anywhere in the chain. So I think I want this to go like right before everything, right? So here's the image. So I think I want this to go into here, and I want this to go into here. And now that'll blur out. We don't really need too much going on up there, just enough to give it a hint that something's up there, because we're gonna like cover that up later. So let's see what we can do here. Right, I can do a color correct, so converter. I can do a hue and saturation. Let's see, hue and saturation, so I can get rid of the blue. So let's see here, color. Let's see, where is it? Hue and saturation and value, right? So I can take saturation all the way down, that gets rid of the color. Okay. Value I can play with, but I'll just leave that. And then over here, I could do a brightness and contrast. Color, brightness and contrast. Contrast it up. And bright it down. And now, not liking that. Plus, I think we got to push that way further out. So let's do this. Let's try this. I see what I'm doing here. I see the error of my ways. So let's go to item for plane. Let's say make this 1500. That's enough to push it to the horizon. Let's say, let's take the volume out of here, okay? And we'll put the volume into everything so that everything is affected by volume, including the water. Okay, let's take this off. So now, because we're still in surface. Now we got volume. Okay, we got sun. And if I do a test render, I don't know what's going to happen. Let's take this background too. I'm getting nothing. Let's throw volume back into main. So we have this still. All right, so let's play around with this a little bit more. Okay. Probably pretty cool. And let's see what happens if, yeah, okay, that's what I want. I want to take this down on this, so I want to take my background down and I want to render this, and then I can just use this to screen over the top. And let's see what happens if I play around just a little bit more. Just something that shows there's something going on up there. And then we can blur this out in comp. So let's do this. Let's render image. And let's go back to compositing. And you can see that I pushed this to the horizon, so that's not cool. So it looks like we're gonna have to use this as a holdout. So here's another trick, right? Watch this. I should have thought about this before. So let's go to layout, okay? And what we'll do is we're just to take the main scene. We're gonna turn on the main scene, okay, in surface. And I'm gonna go in here. I'm gonna say the entire scene. Let's turn on holdout, okay? And this, we'll turn on holdout for this. Okay, and now this is cut out of the surface. And then in main scene, we just have to probably turn off the volume. Okay, so now that's cut out of here. Okay, so holdout actually lets you cut stuff out and it'll render this way. So the stuff that you just saw, And it's kind of cool that I missed that, so I could show you how to do that, right? So this is cut out, okay? This is like over here. That's just obviously not going to work, right? But if you do this now and you see our cutout over here, okay, it's effectively cutting out the background. So watch this. So I hit render now. This is Blender 3 happening. This is fun stuff, okay? So what did we get now, right? I go here to compositing and oh, look at that. It looks horrible, right? What did we do? What did we do? What did we do? Well, I think it didn't take. So let's go back here and let's look at this, okay? Let's see what happened. So in Surface, we have main scene, okay? We have a holdout, but we turned off the volume, okay? And that's fine because we're getting this cut out, which is what we want. And let's look at Surface. Let's go to main scene. And what happened in main scene? Ah, volume was turned off in main scene for the render. Ha ha ha. Let's turn that back on. Okay. And now let's check Surface and see if that's on before we hit render again. Right? Surface and plane. Okay, that's good. And here we have a holdout. And volume is set to render here. So that's not cool. That's not cool. That's not cool. Okay, let's hit, we don't want that rendering here. But if I go to main scene, it's off. And I don't want that. So let's just see what happens if I turn that on. And what happens when I render with both of those. It might not make a difference. Let's see. That probably won't make a difference. So let's go ahead and render that. So these are like troubleshooting things that you get into the more you do this stuff. And I kind of want to leave this in the video just to show you like, hey, yeah, I came up with that and I missed that. So how do I fix that? Well, here's a way to fix that. And the more you do this stuff, the more you realize there are ways to fix things. Lots of ways. Holdout matte is a great one. Really interesting about that volume thing though. You'd think it would just hold like a take in Houdini, but it doesn't. So we're gonna have to bump that up pretty well. All right, so here's what we got in comp now. Okay, we go to comp and we have this and everything loads back in. Okay, that looks good. But now we have to say brightness and contrast. Okay, we're gonna have to turn that up and turn up that contrast a bit. And there we go. We're starting to get that surface. Okay, we're starting to get some surface up here. It's not very bright. But we keep playing and we're getting a surface. And you know, you can render a better surface up here, but that's probably going to be okay because we're really going to like hammer down the light in comp. So what we'll do now is we're going to render this out. So let's just do render image from here. Actually, if we pipe this now into here, okay, we can add in a layout reroute switch and just plug that into composite. And now if I hit render image, you'll see it's going to render this pre-comp. Okay, I'm going to call it everything I do in Blender, I'm going to call it pre-comp because the other comps I do in like Resolve or Fusion or Nuke, it just ends up looking a bit better because we have more tools that Houdini doesn't have. Okay, so composite together. Okay, so I write this out as an EXR. Okay, so image, save as, and I'll save it as an EXR to my desktop. All right, so I'll write this out as an EXR, multi-layer. That's fine. And I'll just call this underwater precomp.exr, okay? And we'll go into Resolve. Okay, so here we are in Resolve, and just inside the edit menu, and I've dragged in the underwater precomp, okay? And you'll see immediately out of Blender, because we're using Filmic, that this looks dark. And it's kind of cool, but it's dark. So what we want to do first is we can do one of two things. We can change this. We can change the LUT. One of three things actually. We can change the LUT, which just changes what we're working in. We can go to Fusion, which we're going to end up using, maybe using, and change it in there, or we can change it in the color. Over the color area here, okay, the color page, and I think we're going to use the light rays in the color page anyway. So let's go ahead and use that. So what we can do first is I can use like a color space transform or an ACES transform. And if I use like ACES output transform, change that to sRGB, and we get kind of a nice ACES color space, which we can work in. And being that we're in EXR, we have a lot more latitude to change the lighting in here and make it a lot cooler. And then we're not necessarily using ACES in Filmic, we're using, I think, OpenColor.io. So you could go ahead and undo that. And you can also use a color space transform here. And you can say, output, so input use timeline, input gamma use timeline, and output color space you could change to sRGB, and output gamma you can change to sRGB, and that's not working very well either. Or you can go in, a nice way to do this is if you go into Fusion, okay, without using the LUTs up here, we'll just use Fusion, and you can right click here, you could say add tool, oops, and you can do color, and then you could do gamut, and you just kind of want to change it to wide gamut, right? So wide gamut RGB, and this is actually from Filmic. This is actually what we see in Blender. So this is probably the closest and one of the easier ways to do this, besides using a LUT, and you can work on here and get it working. So now if you go to the color page, you're actually operating on what you see out of Blender from Filmic. So that's pretty nice. Okay. So then what I can do is I can right click, say add node, corrector, add another corrector here. And I like these sun rays. So where were they? They're not called sun rays in here. They were called light rays, right? So you drag light rays on top of here, and you get light rays. Okay? And here's the start of the light ray. And you can pull this out. Okay. And then you can lengthen the light rays. Okay. You can brighten the light rays. Okay. There we go. And you have more control. Okay. You don't want to go too crazy on this, but you take the shine threshold down. And there we go. So it actually will find, not like find where the light source is, it finds the brightest areas of the image. And these happen to be, the brightest areas of the image. So it kind of extrapolates and you say, all right, well, that's kind of where the sun is coming from without doing too much of, a whole different comp for this. Okay. And then you can go in here too, and you can add a node, color corrector. You can throw that in here too. Okay, over here, there it is. And you can say glow. And now you can glow areas of the image too, just to kind of blur them out and make it look like there's more sediment happening. All right, so there we go. And that affects the rays as well. And then you can soften up the rays a little bit too, because they're way too sharp. And if you were animating this, that's a good way to go about it. Now you can see this is like way too hot, so let's take that glow and up the threshold a bit. Take down the spread, take down the opacity, and then you can like really start changing the color. The thing I like about Resolve over Blender here is that you can really go ahead and change the color. Like I can even operate on the first one here, on the first color corrector, and you can just you can take your looks, right? So here's blue, right? I can surround blue, and I can like push blue or take blue down. Watch this, right? I get a nice spread here. And I could desaturate from here, or I could saturate, and well, you can see it's blowing out. Okay, there. Right. You can play with your, you can play with the curves too. So you can go back here to curves, and you have, you know, these are like the Photoshop curves that you're used to using. And then you can actually play with the lift, gamma, and gain as well. And then you also have shadow, midtone, and highlight. I like lift, gain, and gamma. I usually don't. These are the blacks. I usually don't play with this too much. But gamma, you know, we could push gamma. So we could say like, you know, the highlights will be like a little bit more bluish, blue, green. And then the highlights we can push more toward the yellow. And we can start emulating that look that we found inside, okay? So we can start pulling out, you know, and really, really kind of push it. And if the camera's animated, you know, you probably want a better texture than this. I use this because it was kind of the closest to as an example, a fast example. And, you know, I probably should have covered up this little stretching over here by just duplicating another one of these, but whatever. You could see that you could start getting a really cool underwater effect that emulates what you see in actual photography, right? So obviously we probably need a little more lighting here. So what we could do is we could even, in Fusion here, yeah, in Fusion, we could go ahead and do some stuff where we can fake lighting up here. So watch, I can add in a background, right? So I could hit a shift, actually, yeah, what is it? Shift spacebar. I could say background. Here's a background. Hit add. Okay, that throws this background over this whole thing. Okay. The merge here, I just want to change from this to, there's no add here, so I'll say screen. And what I want to do is I want to change the, I want to change this. This is the background. I want to change the color to white, and you're going to see everything kind of whiten out. Okay, it whites out. And then what I can do here too is I can change where it is, so I can add a mask, right? So I could just, let me see, shift spacebar. I could type in ellipse, ellipse, ellipse. There it is. There's ellipse. Okay. Want that, hit add. Okay, that puts a mask in here. And I can just kind of like put this up here and mask this area up here. And over here, okay, in the, in this I could say soft edge, okay. I can pull that up even further. I can pull that out of frame a little bit, okay, and that kind of gives us that, this will now be the hot area of the image, the hottest area. Okay, in the merge, we can take that down a little bit if we don't want it to be that hot. But now if we go back here to color, you'll see that this all changes. But now let's turn off the glow for now and just worry about the light rays. So if you hit this little like 1 or 2 or 3, that turns off the effect, turns off the color corrector. So now source threshold we want to push up. Okay, and we can pull the length out, and now you're getting like those real, you know, now you're telling it where you want those to come from, right? So where is our light rays? Okay. Where's our position? Our position dot disappeared. How do you like that? Okay, but whatever. We can pull it, we can control it here. And now we're getting these strong light rays coming from here. And we can also break that up so that we get more light rays, because there's nothing breaking it up right now. So we can go ahead into Fusion, and what we can do here is I can say background ellipse. I can throw in a fast noise. Okay, that merges this, but I only want that to happen in the ellipse. So let's go ahead, reconnect. Oops, let's go ahead, let's back out of that. Let's just reconnect here. So let's throw in fast noise. Okay, here's fast noise, hit add. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna create this background, okay? So I'm gonna take the background here, and I'm gonna say fast noise is connecting into the background, and then the ellipse is gonna go into the fast noise. Okay, some of you are probably like, why don't you just do it that way? And I just did it. So now I'm breaking that up, and the fast noise here we can control with detail. Okay, and that's gonna break this up. Okay, it's gonna give us a nice cloud effect. And when I go back to color, okay, you'll see that we're getting this, and then let's just get rid of that glow for now. And what I'll do is I'll say light rays, bright regions, source threshold, there we go. So now we're getting like this crazy, nice light rays coming through some disturbance up here. And we can go into Fusion and we can take that disturbance up. Okay, that's just tied to our ellipse. So we could put that up here, get that out of the way. Okay, and we're getting some nice, murk. I'm going back to that word murk here. And yeah, brighten that up. So now we're getting real light rays coming. Length, we can brighten up more. Okay, so the more you play around with this stuff, the more you can start. See, here we go, right? So I'll take that. Now we're getting some really crazy stuff. And threshold, there we go. Okay. Now, I don't like this clipping up here, and I'm not exactly sure. I'd have to see why, because it's a 32-bit image. It shouldn't be clipping like that, but there we go. So now we're getting light rays, okay? And now lastly, this is a cool trick. Here's how we blur different parts of this. Because remember I said like when we have like different areas of blur based on like, temperature differential and stuff, right? So here's a cool way to blur this all. If I go here and at the end of the chain, okay, I added another fast noise, right? I could just duplicate the other one or just add another one, right? I don't want nothing selected, okay? It's important you have nothing selected. Okay, I hit fast noise, hit add, that's cool. So now I'm gonna go in and I'm gonna type in displace. Okay, so I can do a displace. Okay, I throw in displace into this chain by hitting shift. Okay, so displace will be now part of this chain. And now fast noise will drive the displace. And now you'll see what happens if I go and I start doing detail. I turn the detail up. Okay, let me go. This is like really small here. It's hard for you guys to see, but let me turn this up a bit. Okay, 100. So now I go to displace, turn up contrast, and we start blurring this around, right? I go to scale, and I start blurring that around. Okay, brightness. Detail. And we start getting that water effect, right? So this is cool for that water. So this is like worth the price of admission right here, right? This is like the water effect is, I really, really like this, right? So here we go. This is like even cooler. And when we take this brightness down, we take the contrast down a bit, and you start getting different areas that are blurred, and it just kind of messes it up. And the cool thing is too, like if you wanted this to be like animated, right? You could just like take the seed rate, put the seed rate up pretty high, and watch what happens now when I hit play. Oh, look at that. Right? Now that's happening way too fast. It's not going to be that fast, right? So let's turn seed rate down. Okay, there we go. And then we can take like detail up, contrast down. And now we're adding life to our image, right? And there's some life. It's actually acting kind of like water acts, okay, to a greater or lesser degree. You know, play with these settings until it looks right to you. But there we go. All right, nice. And now if you go into color and you hit play, it's going to take a while to, but you can see we're getting like shimmer, and you'll see that these like the lights will dance a little bit too, right? So we're not even animating the camera. We're not even animating anything in Blender right now. We're just kind of animating this happening. So there's like quite a bit you can do once you bring into diffusion, but that's a good start. So I think in the next video, if you guys watch this and you like it, I'll do another one where we take another environment and kind of break it down and show you how to create something that's, you know, passable. And obviously, like, this needs more work. This is way too dark over here. There's like some other stuff we can do, but you get the gist, right? So hopefully you get the gist, and I hope this has helped you guys and you get something out of this. So thanks, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.